Hey guys, this is Tom Hanks. Welcome to another automation stream, and obviously it's also going to be BeamNG a little bit later on as we test the cars in BeamNG. Today is the day where we are going to do the entry-level luxury sedan challenge. And you should see automation in just a second. Now there were some technical, let's say, issues with one of the cars. But we'll get to that later on. So I will review the cars in automation first, starting with the first entry, which was the Falcon E320N by Logorus. And this is a very sort of sleek looking design. The first category, of course, is for the scoring is, of course, styling. So don't get me wrong, I like the way that this looks overall, but it doesn't have the sort of typical design of a luxury car, if you know what I mean. It looks very aggressive and sleek and sporty. It doesn't necessarily look like a luxury car to me. And this is why I think I would give this a 6 out of 10. Still good, but more like a sports sort of four-door coupe, something like a Porsche Panamera, BMW 8 Series, whatever comes to mind more so. And yes, those cars are also sort of luxurious, but they're more like sports cars. So this will get a 6 out of 10 in terms of its design. Realism is the next category in this in the judging. So we have a 3.2 liter straight six, revving, which is naturally aspirated and dressed to nearly 9,000 RPM, yet only makes 236 horsepower. I'm gonna say this isn't particularly realistic. And if we go to the engine, I've had a look here. The exhaust is way too small. As you can see, this restricts maximum power to 125, and this can only be intentional to kind of bring the maximum torque down into lower RPMs. But this severely restricts the power output. And I think you could have, like, if the goal was to make the engine quieter, then I think you could have just made it smaller and maybe turbocharge it, or use a reverse flow muffler. I don't know. I don't think this is a particularly realistic thing to do, and neither is the 7-speed manual. Yes, I know they existed. I know that cars like the C7 Corvette came with a 7-speed manual, and if I'm not mistaken, Porsche also offered a 7-speed manual in some of their 911s. But in an entry-level luxury car, maybe I'd say a 6-speed manual would be somewhat, realistic, but more than 90% of these cars have automatics these days. So I'm gonna say that the realism on this is fairly low as a result of these two things. Yeah, the rims are sort of small, but actually very small, only 15-inch. I'm gonna say that the realism of this overall car is fairly low. I'd give it a 3 out of 10. There are some bits that could be done, like making a car of this general shape into a luxury sedan. And if we go here, this has luxury interior and entertainment. So you did make it work to still fit this large car into the budget, even though this has a larger wheelbase than most entries here. So credit where credit is due. But that being said, some of the engineering choices are just not what you would expect in this car. The luxury score was 114.7, which is good. But yeah, definitely much better than my reference car, which I didn't really took that much on time to do, but it only gets like 78 or whatever on the luxury market. So definitely well done on that. Next entry was the Atlas Gemini by Sedan 57 Chevy, which, if you're watching, happy birthday. So this is a smaller car with 2.8 meters wheelbase. I do like the design of this one. It looks much more like what I had in mind with a luxury car. It's got some nice chrome details. Even though doing this kind of thing isn't really common anymore these days, but still looks good. I like the headlights. I like the sort of subtle chrome accents on the vertical, like the vertical lines here in the grille. I think it looks classy and elegant. I do like the rear end as well. So overall, interior doesn't count towards the styling score. I will just note that this has one, and I think it's well done. But even without the interior, the styling, I would say I would give this a 9 out of 10. I think only to leave a little bit of room for something that might be even better. But I do really like this design. Realism. We've got a 4.8 liter V8 naturally aspirated with 418 horsepower. Now, of course, we're living in a time of downsizing, but even so, you still get some naturally aspirated V8s in today's cars, like the Ford Mustang GT, like the Lexus LC500, and some other cars too. So it's not like the naturally aspirated V8 is, well, it is kind of dying, if you will, but it's not dead yet. So the tune looks decent as well. I think you could, with a high redline like this, you could probably get more power out of it. But it looks fine to me. It's got a 6-speed advanced automatic, which is maybe a little bit, these days you would probably be looking at 7 and 8 speeds in almost every luxury car, but 6 is, well, if you're a little bit behind in technology, then that's still fine. The wishbone front, molded link rear, and it's all-wheel drive. So I can't really see anything that's not like unrealistic about this car. The 6-speed is maybe perhaps the only thing that's a little bit questionable. So I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10 in terms of realism. Like this is something that I could see being made in real life. It does cost 49,800, so probably 8-speed automatic would put it over budget. The luxury score is 118.5, so that's very good as well. And yeah, so this is definitely a strong contender as of yet. But we've got quite a few more cars to go. There are actually 12 entries this time around, so we've only seen 2, so there's 10 more to go. Next up is going to be the WMC Saishin 460. I hope I said that right. And this was sent by Random41. Now, let's start with the styling once again. I do like that this has definitely quite a bit of detail on the front and some chrome, but honestly, I feel like it may even be a little bit too much chrome, simply due to the light reflections here in the showroom and automation. But also, I don't like the headlight arrangement quite as much as on the other car, and I'm not a fan of this grille down here. I think, especially with when you look at it straight on, this adds a lot of like confusion, strange reflections down here, where you could just as well not have a grille at all there, just a flat surface. But I do like these little elements on the side here. The rear looks elegant, a little bit simple as well, but it gets the job done. I do also think that this little chrome bar here could be a little bit thinner to match the thickness of these red taillights, to make it flow a little bit better in my opinion. But I'm gonna give this overall style a 7 out of 10. Good, but could be better in some ways. Let's look at the realism of this car. It's got a 3.2 liter turbocharged V6 with 312 horsepower. Well, due to the way that turbos work here in automation, the turbo threshold is reached pretty late. I think you could improve that in some to some extent by reducing turbine size and increasing the AR ratio, but even then it's not going to be anywhere near what you would get in real life with twin scroll turbos and whatnot. So I can look past that. We've got all-wheel drive. We've got an 8-speed automatic or advanced automatic. We've even got 2 gears of overdrive. The power distribution looks realistic. It's got a viscous diff. 5 seats, premium and premium. So the luxury score may be a little bit lower in this one. I don't know. But yeah, just mechanically, I don't see anything wrong with this. I think that this could definitely be produced as it is. And so this would get a 10 out of 10 in terms of realism, because I don't see anything wrong with producing a car with this basic hardware, if you will, with this type of body, with this type of tech in it. Strikes me as something that could easily be produced in real life and sold as well. Now, now here it looks a little bit dim. Yeah, competitiveness in the luxury market is 0. So this will probably be the lowest ranking car in that category, given that you can't get any lower than 0. But overall, I think, depending on how this drives in terms of its ride quality in BeamNG, it still has a shot at doing well. The next car would be the Mara Cavalier by Andy D. And let's start with the styling. I feel like the front end is a little bit simplistic to my taste and a little bit dated with these headlights as well. Sort of makes me feel like sort of makes me think of like an old Honda Civic or Accord sedan, where the owner just put aftermarket headlights on it. It's the kind of vibe I'm getting. The rear end is also a little bit simple and also looks a little bit dated. I don't see any like fine details or LED arrangements. I'm gonna give this styling, and I'm sorry for that, but it's a little bit too simple and a little bit too dated for me. I'm gonna give this styling a 3 out of 10. Let's see how realistic this is. Now, this is a 4-liter naturally aspirated V8 with 240 horsepower. It is definitely tuned for a low-end torque, which is good. It's got reverse flow mufflers, pretty low cam profile and BBL profiles, low friction cast pistons for lower fuel for lower fuel consumption. Yeah, looks fine so far. We're running rear-wheel drive and a 7-speed advanced automatic. Yeah, I feel like an open diff is not ideal, but guys, a lot of cars still have open diffs, so 205 section tires front and rear are a little bit narrow for a car like this, but it doesn't have a whole lot of power, so you can probably get away with it. We're running 5 seats, premium interior and entertainment. Yeah, I feel like this can also be produced in real life. What is the wheel size in this? 17-inch? Sure, makes sense. Now, even though the visuals, the design would have to change, but mechanically, I feel like there's not much wrong with this. Maybe a little bit low on the horsepower in terms of horsepower per liter. So for a 4-liter V8 these days, you gotta get more than 240 horsepower. But other than that, I don't see why this wouldn't be realistic. And so I'm gonna give this like a 9 out of 10 in terms of realism. On the markets, this does very well. 134.7 in the luxury score. Can we make other? Is this only one today build? Sorry, could you rephrase your question? And I don't understand what you mean. We have 12 cars to look at if that's what you're asking. So this is the next one. This is the Merida M by Antonio Del Mar. Now he says this is the car that he also entered into the CSR 140, which I also entered in. Yes, those are viewer built cars, and they submitted to my community challenge. So this is an SUV actually. So well, actually this is the sedan version of the body. So technically it's a sedan. I'm getting Nissan vibes on the front end, like 2010's Nissan, so a little bit dated. Rear end also looks a little bit dated, and also the fact that on these kind of sedan SUVs, if you will, so the SUVs that for some reason exist with like a sloping roofline that make them look like a coupe. Yeah, they usually have a really tall rear end, so you're gonna end up with a lot of blank space. And yeah, this is why I don't think the rear end on this is particularly strong. And so for overall styling, I'm sorry, but I'm also gonna give this a 3 out of 10. Let's see how realistic this would be to make in real life. So it's got a 3-liter V6. revving to 8,000 RPM, making only 200 horsepower. So it is pretty low power, but it does have a very wide torque band and a very wide power band as well. No VVL on this engine. Running multi-point fuel injection in 2020 makes sense in like really cheap cars, but for a $50,000 luxury sedan, you would probably expect the engine to have direct injection. But I'm not gonna place too much emphasis on that. Let's see what else we got. All-wheel drive, 5-speed advanced automatic. Now that, I'm sorry, but we're not in the 90s or early 2000s, right? We're not using 5 speeds anymore these days. Also, I feel like just how much space there is, like the gap between the tire and the fenders, both front and rear, you could do something about that with morphing. Well, that goes mostly into the styling category, but also in terms of realism. Like who makes a car that has like such massive gaps around the wheels for the like between the wheels and the fenders? So realism. Like the engine, I think, should produce a little bit more power for its size, and should probably also be turbocharged. But well, naturally aspirated V6s can still work, I guess. But it should make more power for a 3-liter engine, and the 5-speed automatic also hurts it in terms of realism. So I'm gonna say realism. I'm gonna say 6 out of 10 because some other bits are actually good. Market, we're looking at 79 in the luxury segment of the market. So that's decent but not great. And we will see how it drives in BeamNG a little bit later. Next is the Volga Cyber LS200, which was submitted by Random41. Now here, let's start with the design. I see a lot of detail going on. I see quite a bit of chrome as well. Overall, the front is still a little bit simple with the way that the front grille is laid out and this arrangement down here, but it works. Let's see the side. There's basically nothing on here other than this little i6 badging, the door handles, and this little badge here. I'm not the greatest fan of these taillights, I have to be honest. I feel like there's too much blank space here, and the whole taillight and indicator arrangement is too far to the middle for my liking. So I don't like that as much, but I do like the front. I gave this overall a 6 out of 10 for styling. Let's see if this thing would be realistic to make. So, is it an automation ZDF transmission? I don't know. Like, if you mean, is it are the transmissions in automation made by ZF? Then no, because there are no real world manufacturers that make parts for automation. Like it's just any like unbranded gearbox. Speaking of gearbox, this has a 6-speed sequential, which is kind of not really a thing. these days in real cars. And then in terms of the engine, we're using a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated straight six with 227 horsepower, revving to 8,200 RPM. Again, something you wouldn't really see in real life these days, because cars that have around this much horsepower, 227 horsepower, these days would be using a 4-cylinder turbo engine, either like a 1.6, 1.8, or a 2 liter, something along those lines. And so a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated straight six with less torque, worse fuel economy, and the same power as one of those turbo inline fours would just not make much sense to produce in real life. So all in all, I would say the realism on this one is not particularly strong. We have variable hydraulic power steering, which I get, and I wish more cars would preserve that in real life. But unfortunately, like most cars, even in this price range, have electric power steering, variable or not. I'm not gonna knock you for it though, and I'm still gonna say that the realism on this one is rather weak, and then I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10. The market score is 106.3. There are double clutch transmissions in automation, yes. There are. Next up is the Durandal SC8 by Armor Motors. Now here I do like that the headlights are sort of thin and look like LED stripes in various shapes. But I think they're a little bit too small, too thin. And I don't really think that these massive vents here, these ones, really belong on a luxury car. The whole front end does remind me sort of the face of a Jaguar F-Type. I like the black details on the side here. The rear end is where I would say it looks like a Mazda 6. Again, I think the taillights are a little bit too thin. And there's a lot of blank space between the taillights and like the exhaust and rear bumper. But I would say that overall the design looks good. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, or the new Mazda 3 Sedan, yeah. That's also kind of in the same boat. Realism is next. So we have a 4.4 liter turbocharged V8 with 388 horsepower. Now this is nice and torquey. It has a pretty good torque curve and a wide power band, so I like the tune on this one. It is only single overhead cam and 3 valve per cylinder, which is something you don't really see these days. So, yeah, not exactly the most realistic thing to or engine head to be using, I would say. We've got a 7-speed advanced automatic and all-wheel drive, the 50-50 power split. Yeah, I think other than the head design for the engine, I think I don't have any problems with this being realistic, but I will deduct some points for that. So I will say realism is an 8 out of 10. Hello Revhang, how's it going? Next on the list would be the Halpin Turas more? Question mark? No idea how you say that. And that was sent in by Animated Gaming 12. So design-wise, I kind of don't like the material choice here for these headlights, because they sort of look like pastel colors, pastel white, or at the very least very opaque and not like real LEDs. Like, what is the default fixture material like here, right? Like this I don't know. And there's also no sort of contrasting sort of filler in between no glass in between or anything like that. So, and I don't think that this grill was the best choice if you're going for an almost square kind of arrangement of the headlights. Then choosing this shape of a grill in between is probably not the best choice here. Moving to the rear, again, a sort of interesting design choice here, which look, I don't particularly like it. Okay, and again, there's no contrast in this massive arrangement of lights, like no contrasting surface underneath, no glass, no plastic, even no chrome, whatever. So I'm not a fan of this design, I have to say, and I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 10. Now let's look at the engineering. We've got a 3.5 liter turbocharged straight 6 with 342 horsepower. And it spools up very early, this turbo. So well done on that one. And that's even though you're using one bar of boost and 54mm turbine, or sorry, compressor. This is a, let's see, 4 valve per cylinder, again as you would expect. Dual overhead cam, as you would expect. It's got a semi-space frame chassis. That, however, is not something you'd see in real life. So, but other than that, an 8-speed advanced automatic, a wishbone front, multi-link rear. Again, I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10 for realism, just like the last car, because the semi-space frame is really not. It's really not a common chassis type these days anymore. Like 90% of cars are monocoques. And the market score is 146.7. That's very, very good. I think that's the best one. Next up, the SMC Grandeur. Hang on. I think I made a mistake here. That was the Halpin Taurus. I only made a mistake here on my Google spreadsheet where I keep track of everything. So this had 146.7, yeah. That's all right. Next up, the SMC Grandeur. This was sent in by Hugo Oyon on Discord. Let's look at the styling now. I do like the general idea of the grille and the headlights in terms of the shapes. I think it looks pretty good in that regard. I just don't think that these headlights look particularly modern in 2020. Like, you could add some additional light fixtures over the top, like some of these LEDs to make it stand out a little bit and to make it look a little bit more modern. But apart from that, I like the way that the front end design works and flows. The rims are a little over the top, but that's okay. The rear end I'm not as much of a fan of. I don't like these tail lights here. I think they're too big and again don't look very modern. So overall I'm gonna give the design a 7 out of 10 because I think that the front is good, but the rear could use some work, and also you could put some more details in the headlights and taillights, but the overall design I think is good. We've got a 2.5 liter inline-5 turbo with 292 horsepower. Yes, the inline-5 is still alive. Audi still makes it, so that's not necessarily something that you would criticize here as a design choice, or as an engineering choice, I should say. I do think you could increase the red line. There's nothing necessarily holding you back here. Everything is still very much green. You can rev this thing to 7 grand without any problem at all. And the reason I say that is because the peak torque only comes in at 3000, which is to be expected in automation on a 5-cylinder turbo. But at the same time, to make the most out of that and to give you a wider power band, I think increasing the red line would be a pretty good choice. The fuel mixture is very rich. Probably way richer than it should be in real life. Apart from that, we've got rear-wheel drive, an 8-speed advanced automatic, McPherson front, multi-link rear, glued aluminum monocoque, partial aluminum panels. Yeah. Other than the engine tune, I can't really knock this too much, so I'm gonna say a 9 out of 10 in terms of realism. This has a luxury score of 62, which is lower than some of the other cars we've seen. Next up we have the Delta 220 by MK Mailer. So I think design-wise, I think the headlights are too small and too thin, especially. Or alternatively, the front grille is too far down. Like, it doesn't connect to... It doesn't flow with the headlights. It's kind of just bang in the center, and the headlights don't really flow with it. These wheels are definitely a unique choice, and I can't say I'm a big fan. I can't say that I'm a big fan of them, I should say. The taillights are very like detailed. Is this like... Did you put all of these fixtures yourself? No, this is a... Wait, hang on. What is... This is a body molding kind of fixture. This here? I don't know what that does, but if you made all of these, if you placed all of these lights individually by hand, hats off. It does look kind of futuristic, and I'll give it that. But Overall, I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10 for its design, because I don't like the front end, I don't like the wheels, and the rear end is nice, but not my favorite. So let's give this a 6 out of 10 in terms of design. Realism next. So we've got a 2.2 liter Boxer 4 with a turbo. Subaru and Porsche both make Boxer 4s these days, so that alone isn't exactly unrealistic, but unusual. Let's check out the tune. Now that is where the engine falls short. The tune. So turbo only hits max boost at 4,500 RPM, and yes, it revs to 8,000, but peak power is at 6,900. So between the boost threshold and the peak power, it's like 2,400 RPM, and the torque drops off harshly once the turbos have kicked in. So I don't think this is very realistic in terms of the engine tune. And the way we would fix that would be to decrease turbine size and increase compressor size, or better yet, decrease turbine size and increase AR ratio. You should also fit a bigger intercooler. Other than that, we have a steel monocoque, aluminum panels, longitudinal all-wheel drive, with a pretty weird split, 53% front, 47% rear. And an open diff. Open diff is fine. We've got an 8-speed advanced automatic. Realism, I'd say 7 out of 10. Because this engine is really dragging you down in that regard. The power split, yeah, it's a minor thing. I don't really care too much. Everything else looks reasonable. And the market score in this one is 107. Next up is the Wells i6 V4 by Deuce the Truth. So design-wise, we've got a lot going on the front, but this is all plastic. This is not an actual grille. And then the headlights, while they do flow with this sort of grille arrangement, I think they are a little bit too small, too thin. And also these daytime running lights are just a little bit too simple for me. I think you could have fit another one that goes along this side of the vent. That would have made it stand out a little bit more. I do like this little element on the side. Now this I'm not a particularly big fan of, this sort of, I don't know what this is, these bumper bars going around the rear end. Yeah, don't like it very much. So the rear end is definitely a weak point in terms of the design, in my opinion. And even though I kind of like the front, I'm gonna give this overall, in terms of the design, I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10 as well. Realism, this has a 3-liter turbocharged straight 6 with 220 horsepower. Let's see. Well, another engine that has a peak torque and then it drops off immediately. Engines aren't built like that. So this is definitely gonna cost you some points. And for a 3-liter turbo straight 6, in order for a manufacturer in the real world to justify that, it would have to make more power than 220 horsepower. And let me see once again the turbo tune. Here the compressor is big, but you're using a journal bearing rather than ball bearing. I don't know what was the last car in real life that used the journal bearing. I don't know, but It was a while ago. So this engine tune is definitely holding you back. We've got a 5-speed advanced automatic with rear-wheel drive and a geared limited slip diff. Again, a 5-speed is just not realistic in 2020. We've got hydraulic, not even variable hydraulic power steering, which again, I wish more cars had it, but hydraulic power steering is kind of dead in 2020. Not, well, it's dying. Some cars still have it, but only few and far between. So in terms of its realism, I'm gonna say this is rather low, and I'm gonna give it a 4. So it is more realistic than some cars that we've seen, but rather weak. And the market score is 99.1, so that's decent. This car looks like an EV. Kind of, yeah. Yeah. You know what? The front end also kind of looks like a Hyundai, like a 2010-ish i30. I can see that. And then last but not least is the car that we had technical difficulties with some of the mods. So whenever I tried to import this, even though I have every single grille and headlight and vent fixture from the workshop, it just wouldn't load, and it would say some mods failed to load. So this is the closest, judging by pictures that he sent me, this is the closest that I could get it. So design-wise, but hang on a second. I'm gonna see if I can add the original picture in here as well, so you can see it. Yep, this is it. So this is how it looks for the owner, for the designer of the car. So the rear end imported just fine. And I do like it quite a bit. It looks awesome. The front end, I think there's just a little bit too much chrome. Or rather, the chrome elements are too big and too thick, and they just distract a little bit, in my opinion. There isn't enough contrast. And it doesn't help that the headlight arrangement also has chrome inside of it. So not as much of a fan of the front as I am of the rear, but overall I'm still going to give this a 7 out of 10 for the styling. The luxury score is 139.6 on this one. Realism, 3 liter straight 6, turbo, 380 horsepower. Not 220 like the last one. Tune, so it's definitely spiking up here, which is probably due to VVL, due to the VVL profile. Yep, it's pretty sharp. Could probably smoothen that out a little bit, but I don't think it's like too. I don't think it's too bad. 8100 RPM, so this is definitely a sporty engine, and you know, 380 horsepower is nothing to scoff at. So it is definitely a horsepower output that you would expect in real life for a 3 liter turbo straight 6. It's got rear-wheel drive and 8-speed advanced automatic. Let's see. viscous diff, electric variable power steering, ESC, no launch control, air suspension. Yeah, I mean, mechanically, I say this is realistic, and I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10 for realism. And the market score was 139.6. Okay, so now we're through with the automation reviews. And by the way, I should have started doing this after reviewing these cars. But now, yeah, enjoy the next, or grab yourself a coffee or a beer or a snack or whatever. Next couple of minutes are gonna be this, exporting to BeamNG. I should have done this before the stream, but yeah, my mistake. I'm sorry. So this is one of the advantages that some of the cars with the more simple designs would have, is that they take less time to export to BeamNG. This is not one of those cars, but I'm just saying. So like, yeah, I guess this one. Oh yeah, in the meantime, I could also talk about the results on the for the luxury score. So since we have 12 entries, I'm gonna score them in reverse finishing order. So first place gets 12 points, and so on and so forth. Last place gets 1. So in first place is gonna be the Halpin Touros More by Animated Gaming 12 with 146.7 score in luxury. Second place was the Octopus Touring 5 with 139.6. Third place was the Durandal SC8 with 135.4. Fourth place was the Cavalier Mark IV with 134.7. Fifth place was the Atlas Gemini V8 with 118.5. Sixth was the Falcon E320N with 114.7. Seventh was the Delta 220 with 107. Eighth was the Volga Cyber LS200 with 106.3. Ninth was the Wells i6 V4 with 99.1. 10th was the Merida M with 79. 11th was the SMC Grandeur 2.5T with 62. And then last was the WMC Saishin 460 with a score of 0. Alright, only a few more. Although that last one is going to take quite a while to export, I think. Alright, two more. I feel like on a lot of cars I could see that a lot of choices like 5-speed automatics and whatnot, a lot of compromises had to be made due to the uh, relatively tight budget of 50 grand, and that that was the challenge really, because everyone can make a luxury car if the budget is, let's say, 100 grand, right? It's not difficult to make a car into a luxury car when you've got 100 grand as your maximum price. But for 50 grand, it's not so easy. Right, so this was the last car that we had to export over to BeamNG. So I'm going to switch to that game now. Yep, BeamNG crashed on me earlier today, so that's why that message popped up. Yep, yours was 70 grand when you were done, so you had to start stripping stuff. I totally understand that. So the place we're going here is going to be industrial side and the western industrial area. And here we're going to do the last test, which is going to be the ride quality test. Gonna let everything spawn in first. I'm gonna switch to my own car first. And to demonstrate. So I'm gonna turn ESC off. And I'm gonna take a small run up from, let's say, here. And then I'm gonna try to accelerate out to about 50 kilometers an hour. And I'm gonna go across this road, which, as you can see, has a lot of holes and bumps and everything. This car has been tuned for quite a while to do well in this sort of test, so this is what a good car would look like. Well, cut that out. But I will go the other way as well. So we're going this way. Then turn around. Come on. And go the other way, again at about 50 kilometers an hour. This, in case you're interested, has a 3.2 liter turbo straight 6 with 360 horsepower. Okay, so that was the test. Now I'm gonna And again, this is an example of what a good car should perform like on this test. Now let's do this to make sure that every car is going to spawn here when I press R. First one was the Falcon E320, and I'm going to go with the same order as with the automation reviews. Again, turn ESC off. Manual gearbox. This just sits too low, apparently. Yeah, definitely. We lost something here. I think we lost the front splitter. Yep, looks like that. I mean, it does kind of soak up the bumps reasonably well, but it bottoms out. It's too low, and therefore on this bump test, I'm only gonna give it like a 4 out of 10. Not like a 1 out of 10, because again, when it did go over those holes and everything, it was sort of smooth until it bottomed out. Next up was the WMC Saishin 460. And I'm sorry that this is gonna happen a lot, but I'm gonna have to click Alt Enter again, because whenever I click out of BeamNG and into my Google Docs spreadsheet, or Google Spreadsheet, I guess, the BeamNG is going to go into windowed mode, and so I'm gonna have to make it full screen again afterwards. So that's when you're gonna hear this Windows noise. So did relatively well here. Yeah, it does very well here in this test. I'm gonna say, in terms of ride quality, only because I want to leave a little bit more room for improvement, because the first run wasn't as smooth as the second one, I'm gonna give this a 9 in ride quality. But it was definitely very good. Next up, we would have the Atlas Gemini V8. It definitely hops and bounces a little bit more than the last car. It doesn't float over these bumps as well as the last car, or as my car. It wasn't bad, but I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10. Again, have to go full screen again. Next is the Volga Cyber. There it is. Feels good. Feels very good. Turning circle is awful, but what do you expect on a luxury boat? That was, I think that was the best one so far. That or the WMC Saishin. I'm gonna say this was even better than that one. So I left a little bit of room for improvement with the WMC, and this, in my opinion, is it. So this is gonna be a 10 out of 10 for ride quality. Next up was the Mara Cavalier. This bounces a lot more and doesn't soak up the bumps as much. It also seems to be quite low to the ground in terms of its ride height. Well, not as good as some of the others. I'd give it a decent 6 out of 10. Next would be the Durandal SC8. Apart from that last little hole there, it was actually pretty good. I love the engine too. Feels torquey and everything. That's not really what this test is about though. It did well. I'm gonna give this an... I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. Oh, sorry, I think I missed one. I think I missed the Merida M. Yep, I did miss that one. So let's check it out. I think this is the one with the 200 horsepower V6, if I'm remembering correctly. Still got up to the speed of 50 kilometers an hour pretty easily. It's very bouncy here and also bottomed out a couple of times. This isn't as good as some of the others we've seen. I'm gonna give this, yeah, I think it's about the same as the Mara Cavalier was, so a 6 out of 10. Next up would be the Alpine Touras, which is here. Okay. Actually, very good. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. Because that last one on the way towards the bridge, I can look over that because I was actually going more like 65 or so kilometers an hour rather than around 50, so that was maybe on me. But the especially on the way back, this was super smooth, so very good ride quality in this one. Next would be the Delta 220. Well, okay, so this is what you don't want in a luxury car. Yeah. Okay. On the way there and on the way back, it did the worst. It even, look at that. It even hurt itself. Yeah. So this is the worst one yet. So the worst one we had before this got a 4 out of 10. This, I think, was markedly worse. So I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 10 for ride quality. It was really pretty bad. And I think I missed one again. I missed the SMC Grandeur in between. So let's get that. Sorry, I just hit my mic. This is also quite bouncy. Well, on the way back it did well. I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10 for ride quality. It's decent. It's pretty good. Not the best, but pretty good. Then we had the Wells i6 V4. Pretty well controlled, well damped. It did bottom out though. So I think if this was raised a little bit in terms of its ride height, it would get a 10 from me. But as it is, I'm gonna give it an 8 because it did bottom out twice. But other than that, everything else looked very smooth for ride quality. But I can't justify a 10 on this one. And last but not least, we're gonna have the Octopus Touring 5 HLS. Oof. Well, that's a pretty rocky ride. It bottomed out several times, and also on the occasions that it didn't, it did not look very smooth. Is it the worst one yet? I think it was slightly better than that, but still gonna give this a 3 out of 10 for ride quality. Now, okay, I'm gonna put up this screen, and I'm gonna run the overall calculations for the scores. So, actually, no, I'm gonna go switch back to BeamNG so I can show you each car as I'm referencing it. I just don't know that while also how to do that while also keeping BeamNG full screen, but anyway. The Falcon E320N had a styling score of 6, a realism score of 3, a ride quality score of 4, and then for luxury it came 6th overall, which gives it 7 points. So that gives this car 20 points overall. The WMC Saishin, this one got a styling score of 7, realism 10. Well, 1 point in luxury because it had 0 points on the market, and then 9 for ride quality. So this still gives it 26 overall. Sorry, 27. Then the Atlas Gemini V8. This one got 9 for its styling, 8 for its realism, 7 for its ride, and then it came 5th in the luxury market, which also gives it 8 8 score. So that will mean that this one gets 32 points overall. Next up, we had the Volga Cyber LS200. This got 6 for its styling, 2 for the realism, 10 for the ride quality, and then it came 8th in the luxury market, so that gives it 5 points. So this will mean that this overall will get 23 points overall. Next up, we had the Merida M. No, sorry, first, before that, we had the Cavalier. This got 3 for styling, 9 for realism, 6 for ride quality, and then it came 4th in the luxury market, so that gives it 9 points. And so that means 27 points overall. Next up, we had the Merida M. 3 for styling, 6 for realism, 6 for ride quality, and then it came 10th in the luxury market, so that also gives it 3 points there. And that means this gets 18 points overall. So far, the Atlas Gemini V8 is leading, so that would be a great birthday present for Sedan 57 Chevy if he actually won this challenge. We have the Durandal SC8. This one got 7 for styling, 8 for realism, 8 for ride, and then it came 3rd in the luxury market. That gives it 10 points. So that means we have overall 33 points. One more than the Atlas Gemini V8. Next up, we had the Helpin Touras. This got 4 for styling, 8 for realism, 9 for ride, and then it came 1st for 12 points in the luxury market. So that gives this thing also 33 points overall. Then we had the SMC Grandeur, which got 7 for styling, 9 for realism, 7 for ride quality, and then unfortunately only 2 points for the luxury market because it came 11th out of 12. So this will mean that this gets 25 points overall. Yep, 25, that's right. Then we had the Delta 220. This got 6 for styling, 7 for realism, 2 for ride quality, and it's going to get 6 points for the luxury market because it came 7th there. So 21 points overall. Then we had the Wells i6 V4, which got 6 for styling, 4 for realism, 8 for ride quality, and then it came 9th for luxury, giving it 4 points. So that means this gets 22 points overall. And then last but not least, we have the Octopus Touring 5. This got 7 for styling, 9 for realism, 3 for ride quality, and it came 2nd in the luxury market, giving it 11 points there. So this gets 30 points overall. Which means we actually have a tie. The Halpin Touras More and the Durandal SC8 both tie on 33 points. So this one and this one, they both tie on 33 points. So I don't know, guys, should we do a shootout on the quarter mile? between the top three because they're only separated by 1 point. The quarter mile is meaningless, but you know, it's fun. And we have to determine a winner somehow. Yeah? Okay. Let's do this. This is gonna be the last time you're gonna hear this sound. So, West Coast, drag strip, and we will have the armor, the Gemini, and the Halpin all go down the quarter mile as well. Let's start with the armor because it's the first one alphabetically. Don't worry about those times. Also, how do you clear like the board times in BeamNG these days? Because in the old days, I know that there was a file in the BeamNG folder that you could just delete, and when you loaded the game back up, it would kind of recreate it, but it wouldn't have any times. Twelve 12.895. That's pretty good. And it got a good launch too. So 12.895 for the Durandal. Next up, the Atlas Gemini V8. To be honest with you, the inspiration for this challenge, as I said in the rules video, was the Genesis G70. And I don't think that car would have done a 12.89, let's call it a 12.9 on the quarter mile. I don't think it's that quick. This feels quicker. And it is 12.45. Okay. Okay. So the Atlas Gemini is in the lead. And then we have the Halpin Touras. Let's see. This is I'm looking forward to seeing the result here because this is close. It's a really close one. I don't know, right away the pickup doesn't feel as quick as the others. It is still a quick car. 13.337. Ending with an elite time there of 13.337. But unfortunately that makes this last out of the 3 that we tested here. So the overall winner the winner of the entry-level luxury sedan challenge is Sedan 57 Chevy with the Atlas Gemini V8. Congratulations, and again, happy birthday. I don't know if he's actually here, but even if not, I think that rewatching the VOD is going to bring a pleasant surprise. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the stream today. The next community challenge will go live tomorrow, and I'm really thinking you guys are gonna like that one. It's gonna be a little bit more conventional, no sort of wacky ride quality test. It's just gonna be tested in